Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to open a door that was locked for nearly 80 years. We are going into the dusty archives of American military intelligence to uncover a secret that looks like it belongs in a science fiction movie, not in the history books of World War II. When we think of the air war in 1945, we think of propeller-driven planes. We think of the Mustang, the Spitfire, the B-17 Flying Fortress. These were machines of aluminum, rivets, and loud piston engines. But deep in a secret storage facility in Maryland, owned by the US government, sits a machine that defies all of that logic. It is sleek, it is jet-powered, and it has no tail. It is a pure flying wing that looks almost exactly like the modern American B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. But here is the terrifying part. This aircraft wasn't built by Northrop Grumman in the 1980s, it was built by Nazi Germany in 1944. This is the story of the Horten Ho 229. The aircraft that the United States captured, hid from the world, and studied to build the future of its own Air Force. To understand why this machine was such a closely guarded secret, we have to go back to the desperate final days of the Third Reich. The year is 1943. Hermann Göring, the head of the German Luftwaffe, is losing the air war. Allied bombers are flattening German cities day and night. Göring issues a desperate challenge to the German aviation industry. He calls it the 3 × 1,000 requirement. He needs a plane that can carry 1,000 kilograms of bombs, fly at 1,000 kilometers per hour, and have a range of 1,000 kilometers. It is an impossible request. The technology simply does not exist. The engines don't exist, the aerodynamics don't exist. Most German manufacturers give up. But two brothers, Reimar and Walter Horten, see this not as a problem, but as an opportunity to prove a radical theory they have been obsessed with since they were teenagers. The Horten brothers believed that the drag of an airplane was its enemy. The fuselage, the tail fin, the stabilizers, all of these things created resistance against the air. They believed that the only necessary part of a plane was the wing itself. If you could eliminate everything else, if you could create a pure flying wing, you would have a machine that was faster, more efficient, and more deadly than anything else in the sky. They were geniuses, but they were also outcasts in the traditional engineering world. Working in a garage-like atmosphere, often ignored by the main military command, they began to draft the blueprint for a weapon that was decades ahead of its time. They called it the Horten 229. When the prototype finally took shape, it looked alien. It had no vertical tail fin to stabilize it. It was powered by 2 Junkers jet engines buried deep inside the body of the aircraft. But the most shocking thing about the Horten 229 wasn't just its shape. It was the materials used to build it. By 1944, Germany was running out of strategic metals. There was no aluminum left. So, the Horten brothers built their futuristic masterpiece out of steel tubes and wood. Yes, wood. They used plywood sheets glued together with a special mixture of sawdust and charcoal. At the time, this was seen as a desperate measure of a dying empire. But decades later, American scientists would realize that this primitive construction method had an unintended and terrifying side effect. The carbon-impregnated plywood absorbed radar waves. The Horten Ho 229 wasn't just a flying wing. It was the world's first stealth fighter. Imagine the scenario. It is late 1944. American radar operators in England are scanning the skies. They are used to seeing the large, glowing blips of German formations. Suddenly, a squadron of Ho 229s approaches, but on the radar screen, they are almost invisible. They appear too late. By the time the operators realize something is coming, the jets are already overhead, flying at nearly 600 miles per hour, unleashing their 30mm cannons on the Allied bombers. It would have been a massacre. The Horten Ho 229 had the potential to erase Allied air superiority in a matter of weeks, but history, fortunately, took a different turn. The project was plagued by delays, political infighting, and the simple fact that Germany was burning to the ground. Only a few prototypes were built. One flew, proving the concept worked beautifully, but the third prototype, the V-3, was nearing completion in a secret workshop in Friedrichsruhe when the end of the war arrived. This is where the story shifts from German engineering to American secrecy. In April 1945, General Patton's Third Army was sweeping through Germany.
They weren't just looking for soldiers, they were looking for technology. Specialized units known as Operation Paperclip teams were racing ahead of the main force. Their orders were clear: capture the scientists, capture the documents, and capture the prototypes before the Soviets could get them. When American troops stumbled upon the Gothaer Wagenfabrik factory, they found something that stopped them in their tracks. Sitting in the hangar was the Ha 229 V3. It was huge, bat-like, and menacing. The GIs had never seen anything like it. It looked like a prop from a Flash Gordon comic strip. They knew immediately that this was something special. The orders came down from the highest levels of US intelligence: secure it, hide it, ship it. The Americans didn't put this plane on display. They didn't show it to the press. They disassembled the massive wings, crated up the jet engines, and loaded the entire machine onto a transport ship bound for the United States, under the codename Operation Seahorse. While other captured German planes, like the Messerschmitts and the Focke-Wulfs, were tested openly and often displayed at air shows, the Ha 229 vanished. It arrived in the US and was immediately sent to a secure storage facility. It became a ghost. Why did the US government bury this discovery? The answer lies in the Cold War.
In the late 1940s, the United States Air Force was obsessed with one goal: building a bomber that could penetrate Soviet airspace to deliver a nuclear weapon. The legendary American designer Jack Northrop had been working on his own flying wing designs, the YB-35 and YB-49. But Northrop was struggling. His flying wings were unstable. They crashed. The pilots couldn't control them without the aid of computers that didn't exist yet. The US military realized that the Germans, the Horten brothers, had solved aerodynamic problems that the Americans were still struggling with. They needed to study the Ho 229 in secret. They couldn't let the Soviets know that the blueprint for the perfect bomber was sitting in a crate in Maryland. For decades, the Ho 229 sat in the dark. It was moved to the Paul E. Garber Preservation, Restoration, and Storage Facility, a place where the Smithsonian keeps items not ready for public viewing. It gathered dust, its plywood skin began to delaminate. It looked like a piece of junk. But in the 1980s, the world was shocked by the unveiling of the newest American secret weapon, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. When the sheet was pulled off the B-2, aviation historians gasped. The profile was unmistakable. The beak-like nose, the swept wings, the lack of a tail. It was the great-grandson of the Horten Ho 229. The resemblance was so uncanny that it sparked a massive debate. Did the US steal the B-2 from the Nazis? The official story from Northrop Grumman is that the B-2 was a result of independent American research. And to be fair, the physics of flight are the same for everyone. If you want a stealth plane, physics dictates it should look like a flying wing. But the connection is undeniable. Northrop engineers visited the storage facility where the Ho 229 was kept. They studied the German wind tunnel data. They knew exactly what the Horten brothers had achieved. The German DNA is woven into the carbon fiber skin of the American bomber. In 2008, things got even more interesting. A team of engineers from Northrop Grumman, working with a documentary crew, decided to finally answer the question: was the Nazi wing actually stealthy? They went to the storage facility. They used lasers to scan the surviving, rotting skeleton of the Ho 229 V3. Then, they built a full-scale replica. They didn't put engines in it, but they built the shape perfectly, using the same mix of glue and carbon dust
that the Germans had proposed. They took this replica to a classified radar testing range in California, the same place they test modern stealth fighters. They mounted the Nazi replica on a pole and blasted it with World War II-era radar frequencies. The results were chilling. The tests proved that the Ho 229, approaching the coast of England, would have been almost invisible to the radar chain known as home chain low. A standard German fighter would be detected at 100 miles. The Horten would not be detected until it was 80 miles out, or perhaps even closer depending on the angle. This might not sound like much, but in the world of air interception, it is the difference between life and death. It meant the British Spitfires would have had only 8 minutes to scramble and intercept instead of 19 minutes. That reduction in time would have been catastrophic for the Allies. It proved that the charcoal glue wasn't just a myth. The Horten brothers had accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, created the world's first stealth coating. So why did the Americans hide it for so long? Because knowledge is power. During the Cold War, admitting that you captured a superior technology from the enemy is a sign of weakness. But keeping that technology, studying it, and refining it gives you the edge. The Ho 229 was the seed. The B-2 spirit is the tree that grew from it. The Americans didn't just capture a plane, they captured a glimpse of the future.
They saw a machine that was elegant, deadly, and completely unlike the brute force bombers of the era. Today, the surviving Ho 229 V3 is finally being conserved. It is no longer hidden in a dark shed. It is currently undergoing a long and delicate preservation process at the Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Center in Virginia. You can go and see it. It looks rough. The wood is peeling, the metal is rusted. It looks like a shipwreck raised from the bottom of the ocean. But if you stand in front of it and you squint your eyes, you can see the terrifying genius of the design. You can see the lineage of the B-2. You can see the weapon that could have prolonged the war by months or even years had Hitler put it into mass production sooner. It serves as a dark reminder of how close the world came to a very different ending. It is a testament to the brilliance of engineers who worked for an evil regime and the ruthlessness of the victors who took that brilliance and made it their own. The Ho 229 is the ultimate war trophy, a machine that never truly fought in the Second World War, but helped win the Cold War. It is the alien wing that bridged the gap between the propeller age and the stealth age. And for 70 years, it was the U.S. military's best-kept secret. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the hidden history of aviation. It is a story that fascinates me every time I revisit it. What do you think? If the Ho 229 had flown in 1944, would it have changed the outcome of the war, or was it too little, too late? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from the past.